Welcome to Target Cancer Podcast. I am Dr. Sanjay Juneja. I'm a blood and cancer doctor, the technical term being hematologist, medical oncologist, also known on social media as the Onc Doc, where we just try to educate a whole bunch of stuff about cancer, make it, less scary and more empowered with education. And I could not be more excited about having just the all-American stud. He's done so much. He's been in several films, but the biggest reason, personally, and I'm biased, and I'm so excited to have him, is very outspoken about breast cancer. We have our very own, and by the way, he's pretty good looking, I guess, Cody Christian. Cody, I'm so glad you're here. I mean, everyone knows who you are, but if you just want to say a couple of words about who you are and why cancer is important to you, that would be awesome.
Absolutely, man. I mean, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for the introduction. It was very, very sweet of you, very kind. Um, who I am, I've been in the industry, creative entertainment industry, since I was a baby. I had big visions and big dreams to like achieve and kind of do what I'm doing now, and even where I'm at the moment is kind of just the very beginning in my mind.
I love that.
Um, so I don't really like to say, actor or this or that. Just look, creative person. It's not like that
Yes.
deep. I think the center main focus and what I think is really, really cool is what we're going to be talking about. And to your point, just providing insight and information and personal experience. I will preface this with everything that I will share and everything that we are discussing is my personal experience and my opinions. It's not absolute truth. It's not right or wrong. It's just what I went through with my mom, and that's kind of why I'm here speaking to you. Is I firsthand went through it with my mom and her breast cancer, and I've had people around me in my life go through it, and going through it, being a part of it, and a witness is very different than having to see it and live with it every single day and deal with the gravity of the situation. So I think things like this and avenues of communication like this to provide insight is very important. So I appreciate and respect what it is that you're doing.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that, and I definitely appreciate your passion about it because I think anything you don't know, things that are scary or less scary, when you learn about them and know about them. I see tremendous
Really.
strength and courage from not just the patients, but the people with them in the patient room every day. They're like, dude, how could you be an oncologist? It's sad, it's pressing. I'm like, dude, it's humbling. Like, I get to see tremendous strength and courage through an extremely difficult situation that I hope I could have 1% of the strength of. And I think that education is a big
Yeah.
part of that. So like my wife, she was, got a master's at Tulane teaching university, whatever, and then her mom got breast cancer. And then she kind of had this experience, and I wanted to hear about yours, where like basically she was getting this kind of information, that kind, it was inconsistent. You keep trying to adapt to the situation. You keep just wanting to understand and know where we're at so you can kind of adjust and go forward. And things kept getting changed up. So then that's when she went to med school and does oncology now, 15 years later, because she wants to make sure patients have that. Did you have a good experience as far as, and anyone listening, I really don't know, but like, did you feel at least comfortable with what was going on and everything and have a good relationship, or was it kind of a little bit of not knowing what to expect and where she was at different places through her cancer battle?
I mean, the cancer battle was a long one, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that like that's said and done, and it doesn't come back. Thankfully, she's been in remission, and still has some health problems, but nothing close to that. I think it's her body, and more importantly, her mind recovering from what she went through. Um, for me, and you brought up an excellent point, and I think this could be something that could be discussed and possibly implemented into the future of just a better database and or access to information, not the general WebD, oh, my shoulder
Right.
hurts, therefore I must have like a perforated like lung. No, I mean like actual vetted, credible sources in a combined network on topics such of like this magnitude of cancers and things that like really can rock your world because when you hear it, I mean, everyone's aware. We all know what it means. We all know the word, obviously. I mean, it'd be pressed to find someone that is really like, wait, what? So I think with the connotation that I already have with it, without having to do research first, when you hear the word, you think
Right.
death sentence. You think, all right, this is it. This is over. You hear it time and time again. Okay, so and so they got this type of cancer, that type of cancer, and it took their life. If anything, it's like it's almost just like it's common. You say cancer, you associate it with death,
Right.
or at least that's my
No, for sure.
interpretation at the time. So when it was first brought up, um, I didn't feel like comfortable. I didn't feel good about anything. I actually felt
Terrified.
I was so scared, but I also knew the position very well because I'm 26 now. So this happened. This happened. When was I? 16, 17. This was a minute ago. Um, but at the time, hearing it and seeing my mom having to hold it together, it was really hard for me because I wasn't able to process any type of real emotion. It was kind of just, similar to what my mom went through, fight or flight mode. And I think that's a big misunderstanding is the news, it doesn't necessarily only affect one person. It affects everybody involved. Everybody involved. So when there's misinformation on one, two, three, four ends,
Right.
it kind of makes the experience terrifying. Throughout the process, my mom got the right people and the right doctors, and they're like, of course, all of it came. But I do think back and wish the first, I think, diagnosis, test, um, the first couple months maybe were handled. I don't want to say anybody didn't do what they needed to do, but I think maybe just the type of information wasn't
Right.
neatly presented in an organized way. So people know the psychology of it. Hey, we're telling, I mean, you know,
Right.
I can't imagine it's like a fun conversation.
Right. So it took a few months, you're saying, to really, and that, I mean, rightfully so. Cancer is very complicated. There's all kind of, idiosyncrasies, but it took a few months. But there was a point in the journey where you and your mom were like, where it was like, okay, we can do this, and it became more positive at some point,
Yeah,
correct? It just took a few
but I
months.
think at some point, absolutely. But I don't think that came from anything tangible in the outside world.
Gotcha.
That came mostly from like inner self belief.
Okay.
And that was what I was saying earlier is like, I'm at that age, like that's mom. So like I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna be what I have to be. And if that means just being, there, a rock, being strong for her and being like, nah, like you said you were gonna be here when I accomplished X, Y, and Z. So like you have no choice. You're gonna have to fight
Right.
this. And if not for yourself, then for me.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of it's astonishing like the power of the mind and the relationship the conscious and subconscious mind has with the physical body
It's incredible.
and how
And,
much
I was speaking at a fundraiser a little while ago, and they said, like, so who do you want to dedicate this to? And it wasn't a specific person. I said, I want to dedicate it to, like, kind of the unsung hero. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, really just like that spouse or that child or that mom or that dad of the patients that have cancer. It's like so many times, like, that deserves its own, I mean, obviously no, like, lack of merit to anyone facing cancer, but those loved ones, like, that deserves its own almost like, package or empathy or tools to handle because they're in I've seen people that are married 30, 40 years that like their spouse ages literally 10 years in 6 months just with the stress, with taking care of, to getting them there, to understanding, to what if my spouse doesn't make it? How does the treatment affect me? And rarely do they ever get asked, like, so how are you doing? Like,
okay, like how are you doing?
exactly.
And you know what it is too, it's a lot of people because I can speak on this firsthand from my experience. You don't feel like it's okay for you to feel bad.
Exactly.
It's almost like you feel guilty for having these emotional
Right.
responses, but they're okay. We're all humans. The
Yes.
psychology of like it should be affecting you that way. It is hard. It
Yes.
is tough. It is scary. There is uncertainty. Like during that time for me, I was, my dad was working. My older brother was out of the house, so it really was just like her and I. I'm prepping auditions and going out to try to like book something so that like I can keep progressing the career forward and I can bring money into the
Right.
household and like because I've been working and paying bills for a very long time,
Right.
right? So it didn't change when all of a sudden like my mom, if anything, it was like it exacerbated the situation of like, okay, I need to focus up and I need to really show up. If I have a gift and an ability to use my creativity and my art to like make sure that I'm okay, my family's okay, it added a whole extra layer. But having to prep an audition, be with my mom, hearing her getting sick every single morning, helping her like throw up, and then because she's going through the chemo, the radiation, all of this, I'm watching like my mom's native. Native American. A lot of people don't know this about me. I'm Native
Yeah, I read
American.
that. That
Super.
right.
Um, Heritage wise, it means a lot for Native American for their hair, right? My mom's hair was like beautiful, natural,
Yeah, that's
long.
true.
She's in her 50s. It was like dark, dark black. She's never dyed it. Like there was a sense of like pride and identity with her hair. To have to watch her go through losing that, cutting it off, seeing my mom drop down to 90 pounds, no eyebrows, no hair, and you really have to look at this like, you're feeding your mind and your heart with self-belief every single day, and you're speaking against what you believe the reality to be because like at a certain point you just refuse to accept it.
Right.
Um,
And that
but
and
yeah,
that
it's just
to your
go
point
ahead,
though,
go ahead.
people mean well, and like they'll say like, "Oh, it's just hair, it'll grow back." Like they're trying to make someone feel better. But I've seen plenty of
Of
stuff on
course.
my, TikTok comments and Instagram where people are like, there that's actually even more like they don't mean it, and I appreciate that, but it hurts more because you don't know what the symbolism is. In that case, it's her heritage. In another case, it feels like a victim. And so there's just so much I've learned, even as an oncologist, like about the sensitivity of those things. And you touched on this for a second about working harder and pushing and saying, okay, I just got to step up. I was going to ask you, and it's different. So say in like a metastatic setting, right, where somebody isn't like curable, but yet they're going to have a long, fulfilling life. Hopefully, like with targeted therapies and everything coming out, people live generally years
What is the
with
word?
most
What is the
cancers.
word you use for what is the word you
Metastatic
use
stage
for that?
four, like if it's like
Oh,
metastatic or stage
got it.
four, if
Okay.
it's spread, so it's incurable. Sorry,
Yeah.
I always forget to say that. So if it's incurable, the, some form of treatment is indefinite. And what happens is I worry, and I was going to ask you that, like, is there also on top of the emotions of having to be strong as a support person, is there guilt on saying like I'm having to go to work and not be there, or I may lose, my wife, my husband, my son, my dad, my mom, and yet I have to go. How do anyone listening that says thing like, gosh, I know my loved one has stage four, but I still have to go to work. Like, is there a guilt component, and how do you deal with that?
This is what I've realized, man. Look, human beings, human experience, there's no right or wrong navigating this path. There isn't. There isn't. It's like, how do you want somebody to digest and process an information that, like, hey, we live in a time, 2022, where we still haven't figured it out, haven't cracked the code. Look
Right.
at the advances and the innovations that we've made, but this thing can still take my loved one's life. Like, it's terrifying, man. It
Yeah.
really, really is. But I think for me, what I realized is it's not about, and I'm saying this with a grain of salt, right? Because I am
Right.
very empathetic. Um, but it gets to a point where you have to realize, and it's not about you. It is more about them. It is more about them. It is more about how they're feeling. They're the ones going through it. You're being affected by proxy. And even though your feelings and emotions and whatever it may be are justifiable, they do come second to the person actually experiencing it. Because I've also seen the lack of, and then I've seen the person who is being affected by proxy carrying more weight and making it a little bit more about them, which then now flips it back on the other person of like, oh, well, I don't want you to feel as if you have to hang out in the hospital and yada, 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 yada. And then let's go to the deeper level of that. Well, okay, now you have these emotions that are not being discussed and communicated. You have this feeling of guilt. You have these heightened sense of like, stakes essentially. What is that doing to the mind in the deepest level on the subconscious side when it comes to taking this path of healing itself inside out?
You nailed
Because in
it.
my opinion, and I don't want to speak ignorantly on this, you went to school. Like, I have a lot of respect for science and medicine, but I do think that sometimes there are things that can't necessarily be explained, and I have a like philosophy in my life and
Mm.
what I choose to believe, that like the power of your thoughts and how you're thinking and how you're communicating to yourself can aid in that process, can aid in the fact of how you feel and how
Oh, that's data
quickly and what's
supported.
going on inside on the molecular cellular
Yeah,
level,
no, there's
and I don't know
research.
if there's
No, that is there's data that shows mentality. They've looked obviously like really strong faith and praying, but also just like, optimism or not optimism, implementing optimism, where there's actually like a survival benefit that even like, crazy fancy expensive drugs can't do. So you're absolutely correct, and there's a lot of theory behind that. But you nailed it. But I think it's an important point. Like it is about like at that moment the patient that you're caring for, but on the flip side, and you also said this, like you shouldn't internalize either. Like, and that's what you were kind of touching on. Like, if you do find yourself like, being kind of like projecting your feelings or anger or whatever on other people or the person you're taking care of, instead of letting it get there, you have the right and you should to voice when it's really hard on you. It's okay to say when somebody asks for a hundredth time about like your loved one, like how are you? It's okay to say it's tough because that just makes you a more empathetic person. It probably
You know,
makes you the healthiest source for your, loved one, and it's okay. And I hope people
let's
feel it's okay.
And I agree with you. I think what needs to happen, and this is something that maybe, you could bring to the medical community, but I think in the team of operations, there
Hmm.
really, really needs to be a psychologist involved and someone that is extremely well versed in the scenarios that this world is existing
Yes.
in. Because my mom specifically would have benefited tenfold if she had somebody from jump to speak to grow with, to connect with during the course of her
Right.
treatment, just like a regular therapist. And then also because that person being involved with the doctor, the team, they know the family, that transition's too cool. Let me do a session with my mom. Let me do a session with my dad, her husband. Let me do a
Right.
session with both of them together because we can't expect these people to be able to process and communicate their emotions intelligently when they're going through something that is quite
And for
literally
the
the most
first
traumatic
time, like there's
ever
no handbook.
experienced. And for the first time.
Right. It's like
They've only
everyone's
lived,
figuring it out together at the same time. Exactly. And you don't know the checks and balances. You're literally flying, just taking it a step at a time. And yet we have all this
yeah,
experience and knowledge on saying like how best to cope with each role and everything, and it's just not implemented. That's one of the gazillion
but
things I could
to
fuss
your
about.
experience and knowledge and information, and that's amazing, right? But check this out. What we also need is somebody that is well versed in human emotion,
Right, right.
which is definitely not necessary. I mean, it is in textbooks, but like, we need someone in that field because that is just as important as all the tests and everything that you're putting your time to do because you can only do so much on this front,
Right.
right? But what happens when you walk out that door and my mom and dad are sitting in there and they don't know how to communicate and they don't know what's going on and she
Exactly.
feels bad and he feels this and like there's so much and they don't really have anyone to talk to and then they don't want to burden each other. They both feel guilty. They don't want to go to the real world and say, "Hey, my friend, look, I need to talk to you, and I want to. It's about death and cancer and like, no one wants to have that conversation. And most people, man, let's be real, like they don't feel comfortable having that conversation because the world's not necessarily too kind in regards to like facilitating proper environments for like people to feel safe to communicate and express their feelings.
I mean,
So it's like we see what's going on, and I think like it's like again, I have so much respect and appreciation for you of taking the effort and initiative to just talk about these type of things and go out and get like the real scoop and information because I think through conversation, this is when real change becomes implemented. Now it's like, hey, we do need somebody for the mental, psychological, emotional health and well-being because that is a part of the treatment plan.
yeah.
And why is it not already covered under insurance? Why is like that part of this have to be like a separate? Because that's the
Thank
other
you.
issue.
Yeah.
You talk about really want to save and heal people. That's a part of it. Why was when my mom looking for therapy, she couldn't get somebody because it was extra out of pocket and yada yada yada
Yep.
yada. Keep in mind, they're already looking at millions of dollars on their insurance bill every month. Like,
Bro, you
you
nailed
know,
it. I mean, it's so unfair.
it,
It's like I've learned a lot. I've been very disillusioned since practicing, I only started 2 years ago. There's so much bureaucracy and red tape, and I think anyone that tries to say otherwise is kind of just like, you know, it's cap. Like we
they're
know
saying
it's
otherwise
bottom
because they
dollar
have.
stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
But
No,
so
I.
what my patients ask me what can I do for resources, literally I can't find a behavioral therapist or mental health here. They're booked up for weeks and weeks and months. Insurance doesn't cover it. Somebody has to pay out of pocket $200, a week or whatever. And that's it. So
How
literally
much
at
of a
this point, I'm give
smack in the face that is? Sorry, go ahead. Sorry,
yeah, I
sorry.
know. No, no, I know. I mean, you nailed it. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm giving people TikTok handles and Instagram reels of like, creators that like I really like respect that are totally like geared towards like, process. I mean, everyone's doing it for the first time, dude. It's like when you have a kid, it's like you expect them to mess up and not get it and this, that, and the other. It's just the same thing. It's like we can't be expected, and it's crazy to think that we would know how to navigate something so crazily wrecking, and nobody's supporting it like financially. So like, and
That's like
that's
human. human beings right there though, man, is like the expectation that we should have to face something of this magnitude and be like, "Oh, I should be fine." No, you shouldn't be fine. It's okay to not be okay,
Right.
you know? Like it is heavy. It is a lot. It is scary. And the best piece of advice that I can give, having gone through it personally, is like you're not alone. You don't have to go through it alone. We're in a world, look, as soon as we took our first breath, we all signed up for the fact that we live in a world where we don't really have that much control.
Right.
Only so much that we can do,
And our time
right?
is finite. We're
And
all gonna pass.
exactly, exactly. And I think the one of the biggest motivating factors for me, um, take my time seriously and really, like, I got a bigger like vision with everything that I want to create and add to the world. Stuff like this matters to me. Having these conversations to fix things that are kind of just not being addressed and spoken about. But I've thought about that a lot. The fact that we only have limited amount of time here. And then I'll tell you another thing too is I promised my mom. I said, "Hey, look, if you need to make it, because I have things that I want to show you."
Aw.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'm at a place now where I'm like, "Cool, you're here because I asked you to be here, and you and I did this with each other." And I said, "I'm gonna need you to fight for me harder than you've ever fought."
Aw.
And I think at that time, the scariest part of it, man, honestly, was I didn't know how I was gonna live with myself
If
i- if it didn't work out the way I needed it to after I had done nothing but put self-belief and optimism, and because there was a part of me that felt like, is it wrong for me if I don't know for certain to encourage and to uplift and to like,
oh, that's a good
you know,
point. That's a
and if
great
it
point.
didn't happen and like let's say, and then like would I
Would
as
you
a
feel guilt about
man
it?
would I be sitting here for the rest of my life dwelling on the fact of like I said no, no, mom, please, and then gave her and then it just didn't work out.
Dude, I see that all the
Um,
time. I see patients that are sometimes that have been amazing. You know, sec 2 or 3 years, they're in third or fourth line treatment. It's towards the end, and all they want is somebody around them to just accept and say, "You did an awesome job." And instead, it's always, "You're gonna fight this. You're not gonna give up. You're not a quitter." And they're tired and they're exhausted, and their bodies have taken a toll over the last 6 months of that 4 year journey. And I see it in their eyes. And I know, at least if they're my patient in the room, I will say, like, y'all, I will just say that. I'm like, she hasn't quit and she's gone way further than most people. I'm like, but at one point you need to do the best thing for you. And is it going for a 6% chance of an extra 4 weeks, or is it just like finally accepting and saying like, I'm proud of myself? And that's a big issue I see all the time, and it really worries me about like the guilt that some people, are sent to, their time, to the next world with, is because they don't want to fail other people. But you can see it in their eyes, and that's why I hope anyone listening can say, am I doing that? Like, because I have patients too that like just push like, very hard, because they mean well. Nobody doesn't mean well, but sometimes you want to ask yourself, but am I asking what my loved one, how do they feel in this journey, especially if it's been going on for years? And on the flip side, it's why I'm never a jerk. Like when somebody's a jerk to me, like in the store and stuff, when I was younger and a little less educated, I'd be like, dude, that guy's kind of a, whatever, whatever. Now I'm like, I don't know if that person was in another visit this morning. Like I know how much cancer's out there. I see people and I can't even like show it for HIPAA, but like we'll kind of nod. And it's like, you just
yeah,
don't know what people are going through, one. And
don't
two, it's
listen to
okay
them,
to
you
ask for
know.
help. And three, it's okay to like talk about it, and always remember, like, am I asking the person I'm really caring about what they feel rather than what I need or want to feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the first step to all of this becoming normalized, and I've said it before, I'm going to reiterate, you taking the time and effort, and with your career path and what you've chosen to do, and now with the world in which we live in, the accessibility to information amongst, all the social media platforms, like this is important, man. The fact that this is not a video, and this, as soon as Sean presented this to me, I was like, absolutely, no
Oh,
hesitation, because this is not something that like it's not Hollywood, it's not the I'm not trying to we're not talking about like this is
there's
real,
no flex. Yeah.
this is happening in the world, and rather than keep letting it do this, like let's talk about it.
Yes.
Let's start a dialogue, a very honest, direct, blunt, like what is going on, what have you gone through, what needs to be addressed. This is what I've seen and noticed, this is what you've seen and noticed. Like let's make this better for anyone and everyone. So whenever this goes to the next step, when this goes up and gets shared, like I'm sure he'll let me know, but I want to make sure I'll share it every to the best of my ability, because I think combos like this are
It
important,
is.
and it's have to, and not everything in the world has to be for clout and likes and this and like there's some things that are way more important. I think maybe we're at a time and a place where we have to refigure that out, collectively.
We do.
So I
Somehow we're
appreciate
distance
the
each other
opportunity.
more, like, and by hearing a video like this,
Absolutely.
people are going to know your position, like exactly, Cody, and they're going to say, like, you'll probably make them, tear up because it's like, I know exactly what that feeling is. And I hope people comment on this and tell us what they do for mental health. What are some of the innovative stuff that, like, are implementing either in, like, clinics? I have no idea, hospital, but we got to get there. Like, that's the one.
That's the thing too, man. Mental health is so subject. This is a whole nother we should have another conversation down the line about this specifically
Right.
because the mind and in psychology and mental health is it's something that uh, like I can't even tell you how many grown men that I know that lack basic emotional intelligence and the ability to comprehend and like not live off of pure in the moment ego and pride and like dude, it's crazy to me. But back on the mental health side of things, it's something that needs to be addressed and really like talked about because I've gone through stuff. I'll get into it later when the time is right to share the story, but like I really do firsthand have experience in it. So um just like what we're talking about, there's certain things that it could be better. So if it could be better and it could have better access to more help and more like resources to for real people, like that's what we should
That's
be
it, man.
talking
That's the
about.
sauce. People,
We'll
we
set
can't
up
keep
another one of
ignoring
these
it.
mental health day.
What's that?
I said we'll set up another one of
Yes,
these,
bro.
maybe in person. Man. I'll come down to, you know, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
man, get
And
some
yeah,
crawfish and we'll like,
there
we'll
you
do
go.
all that. That's awesome.
There you go.
Man, I appreciate you so much, Cody. I think of everything you said, it really hit me hard on how insightful and reflective you are when you said, there got to a point where I was wondering if I was saying, hey, you got to be around, you got to do this for me. Am I positioning her to feel like a big disappointment or letdown at the end of her life? I hope everyone
Yeah.
heard that statement. Like that's what you said, and that is a prime example of meaning well, having difficulty like with new emotions that you've never experienced, and at the same time being cognizant of a other person. That's a very challenging trifecta or triangle to balance at freaking 16 years old, bro.
And that's why like there needs to be a middleman. That why
Yes,
like
you
that
need support, right?
specifically
And
what we're talking about. Like, that's what they know. They are very well versed at like this
yeah,
because comfort and understanding and having communication throughout this process would benefit people tenfold. And I
yeah,
mean the patient, the husband, the children, the family, like everyone, man. Because nobody, the daughter is not going to have the time, the money, the resources to like go figure out how to get therapy. She's not going to go to school and like with her friends, she's not going to want to talk about it. So this hurt and this pain, it gets internalized and then it stays there and then it manifests in different ways and then God forbid, something goes wrong and then they're left with
they're
this
left with it.
unresolved
That's the
emotional
key.
angst for the rest of their life and we don't know what that's going to do to affect them and their mind and their health. So it's like, is it a cyclical thing?
Yeah,
Are we setting it up to like,
perpetuate almost in a philosophical like on another.
yeah,
Yeah,
of like
yeah. I mean, that's a wild, wild philosophical thought.
crazy, crazy.
It's like the carry or the generational delivery of continued pain, possibly related to malignancy. That's
Because of everything too, only like because it seems to me like you're quite the philosophical person, and
I didn't know
you
you.
obviously, yeah, right. So it for me, it's like what it what exists in your mind currently, what the narrative going on here truly is your reality and your narrative, right? That's what it is fully.
100%.
If you wake up every day, oh my God, I hate myself. I'm so ugly. Yeah, you are. And eventually your eyes will start to shift and your perspective will change and you will start to see all the flaws, all the things you don't like, all the things you should feel insecure about. You'll create and sustain a bigger narrative. And then give it 6 months, all of a sudden, you're going to be a different person, right? That's how deadly and how powerful one unchecked thought can be. So I think understanding that and being able to process and identify your thoughts. But these are all things that could be taught with the help of like a really good therapist that cares.
Yeah,
Because
you
it's
nailed
not a
it.
bad thing to see somebody, but there's been a stigma of like if you get therapy, then you're messed up, or you have problems, or you're crazy, or you can't. You have that's not true.
Can
Communication
we
is
at least
important.
kill
So if you
that? Like, can we at least kill
yeah,
that stigma to
if you
start?
can't get it through. peers or your family and they're like, "Oh, I can't talk." Great. Go to somebody that can professionally do it. I understand why they don't do it though. I lived it. You know how difficult it is to find somebody and then find somebody that cares about you, that you can trust, that's in your network, that you can afford. I go guys that like, and friends of mine personally, working 80 hours a week, can barely afford to pay rent, are absolutely depressed, are going through things that like, if I could be there and talk to them all the time, great. But when I'm not, you think their priority is to, oh, I can barely put gas in my car. My insurance isn't going to cover therapy. So let me go ahead and spend $200 out of pocket so I can speak to somebody for 45 minutes that keeps checking their phone to see if our session is getting like closer to the end.
Oh,
You want me to like, no, I'm good. And then people avoid it. And then, we have all of these problems. I meet a lot of people and I really love having conversation. I love communicating. I run into so many people, man, where I'm just like, shit, no one's, you know, you haven't
no
had this
one's like
conversation. No
really
one around you has
right.
had this conversation. You realize more and more and more, like, even though we might think it, nobody knows what's going on inside your mind until you express. Right? So that's
100%.
why conversation and things like what you're doing to uh, implore conversation and real conversation, not like, oh, we're doing this for the,
Right.
like, I'm gonna be honest, like, I'm a little like embarrassed, like how you introed me for this because it makes it seem like I'm like, and I'm
No,
not.
because
Like,
I
I'll
knew it
throw
was
my
going this way. That's why I did that
entirely.
intro, because first I got to keep them in so they can see this side of you. And I read everything. I saw like your pride of your heritage and about like the experience. And I was like, I need people to stick to this so they can actually see like how real the stuff is. And to your
And if
point,
you have,
so what I was gonna
go
say
ahead,
is like
sorry.
what you said is like, speaking about it, feeling, we touched on this. We said life is finite, right? You have an X amount of period of time. At the end of the day, the outcome isn't even the most important. It's what did you do with your days? Either if like God forbid if somebody
Experience.
passed, but when they survive, on my comments on TikTok, you know how many survivors say I've never been the same. Every day I wake up in fear and depressed. So they're cured, they're literally cured,
Yeah.
but they're forever currently derailed or debilitated for the rest of their lives. And that's here, and that's mental health, and that's why those things should be prioritized more than how good our drugs are. Because even if our drugs can clear it, you didn't ameliorate someone's life.
Hey, we're gonna have future conversations, right? We have a lot of things to discuss. Now
Yes.
is not the time.
Yes.
Because this information is, but we have things to discuss for
For
sure. We're gonna
sure.
we're gonna touch back on the subject, absolutely.